Overconfidence is a primary concept in behavioral political economy. We can really break overconfidence down into two elements, and that's what we're going to do in the upcoming lecture series. We're going to see that we simplify the reality of wealth creation and progress, that we make it seem very easy. And we're going to divide this up into two categories. The two categories of wealth creation and progress, the ideas of that are kind of at the foundation of our understanding of political economy, can be broken into the idea that we understand what causes us to get where we're going, right? That we know how to drive the vehicle of society, that we know how to move things forward. We understand what causes us to get where we're going. And then the second element is that we understand where we're actually going. We know where we're heading. We know our destination. We know where we're going on the map, right? So we have these two concepts that we're going to break the category of overconfidence down into. The idea that we know how to drive, we know how to move things forward, and that we know our destination. First up is going to be that we understand what causes us to get where. We know how to drive. Why do we think we know how to drive the economy forward? Why do we think we know what moves us ahead? Why do we think we know how to move from point A to point B to point C? One reason we'll explore is that we see simple causal connections as the way progress and change happens. We think we know how to drive the economy because we create simple causal stories of how the economy works and progresses. Think about how we're wired to see causality. I have a simple story that involves traffic lights about how we're hardwired to see causality. I live in a small town, and on the way into work, I was stopped at all 8 traffic lights that were between me and my job. Having to stop at 2 or 3 wouldn't get a reaction out of me. But at all 8, I had to stop. No green lights whatsoever. I thought you had to be kidding me. When I finally arrived at the office, my boss was standing by the door and informally just kind of asked me, "How you doing today?" And I just responded casually by, saying, "Crazy drive in." I got stopped at all 8 traffic lights in a row. Then I unmindfully added in a snarky and sarcastic remark. It's like there's a computer chip in my car that tells the traffic lights when I'm getting close. My boss did not skip a beat, and with an intrigued yet straight face said, "Oh, is that a new safety feature?" My boss is clearly wrong here and had to see that there had to be some cause for all 8 traffic lights to have been red on my trip. It couldn't simply be randomness. We're wired to not allow for that kind of randomness. There has to be something that causes that kind of statistical improbability to happen. And so we look for it and we say, something must have caused that. Something must have happened there. We can demonstrate the brain's continual search for causality with one quick example from a brilliant yet simple study in psychology. The study was published in the Journal of Experimental Social Psychology and was called Spontaneous Causal Inferences. It showcases that our mind spontaneously, without any purposeful effort or knowledge of it occurring, infers causality between actions. Thus, even when we do not realize we've created a story, we often have. The study reported involves 3 examples, but the first is a simple task of recall. People were asked to read a bunch of brief stories, including this one. The story goes as follows. After spending a day exploring beautiful sights in the crowded streets of New York, Jane discovered that her wallet was missing. So that's the story right there. After this, within the experiment, people in the study read a number of similar stories and then were given a distraction task, such as filling in the names of states on a blank US map. During the distraction phase, however, they were interrupted and given a previously unannounced recall test. What the study found is that the word pickpocket had a stronger impact on their recall ability than the word sights. But the word sights is actually in the story, and the word pickpocket is not. The stronger association with pickpocket comes about because our mind has spontaneously inferred a causal relation to our story. Jane couldn't find her wallet because it was stolen. Our mind creates this causal story. It places emphasis on that causality. And we do all of this without even being aware of it. So why do we think we know how to drive? We think we know how to drive the economy because our life has been a continuous experience of putting together causal relationships. Our mind makes causal inferences, emphasizes that causality, and then treats that inference as though it is reality. So when it comes to understanding how an economy works, our mind has been laying the foundation for our thinking since childhood, creating causal stories of how the world works. The problem is, some of our stories are false. If you talk to non-economists or think back to before you ever studied any economics, a common story of why prices rise is corporate greed, or say the owner of a gas station simply is trying to make a little bit more money off the consumer by raising prices. When you logic this story through, you realize it just doesn't make sense. Now, in what ways are your causal stories about economics off base? Is there any kind of skew to them? Well, intentions leading to the intended results is an obvious causal relationship that allows for cognitive ease. In the example just used, that of a gas station owner charging higher prices, we reverse engineer that story to determine the intentions. Why? Because the result must be caused by an intention that matches it. If the store is charging more, that means that more money is coming in. Therefore, our brain likes to say that the intention must have been to make more money. Right? This is just an example, but it's an inference that many make. Because higher prices were charged and more money comes in with that, well, the intention must have been to make more money. It must have been some kind of greed. Right? We make these kind of inferences, and they just don't necessarily make sense in economic actions. And why wouldn't we make these kind of inferences? Think about how often intention leads to results. You meant to open the door when you pulled the handle, and the result was that the door opened. You meant to get stronger by working out. You meant to start a conversation by saying hello. Right? The intention matches the result that you get. Turning this back to political economy, imagine a politician does a policy to promote public safety. Surely then, the policy will have the result of promoting public safety. That was the intention after all. Maybe it won't do it in the best possible way, or maybe it's not the goal the politician should be prioritizing. We all have our beefs with political action. But the general takeaway would be that the policy's result will match its intention. We usually infer this causal relation, that the intending an outcome from a policy will cause a matching result. It is Econ 101 to know that this may not be true. A small reading from Thomas Sowell's classic, A Conflict of Visions, can really drive home this point and help us see how differing the economist's position is. Sowell contrasts Adam Smith's approach, which represents the lessons from economics, that order can be of human action, but not of human design, with William Godwin's approach, which links intentions to outcomes. From page 15 of A Conflict of Visions, Sowell writes, "Perhaps no other 18th century book presents such a contrast to the vision of man in Adam Smith as William Godwin's Inquiry Concerning Political Justice. No work on the 18th century Age of Reason so clearly, so consistently, and so systematically elaborated the unconstrained vision of man as Godwin's treatise, wherein Adam Smith moral and socially beneficial behavior could be evoked from man by incentives. In William Godwin's man's understanding and disposition were capable of intentionally creating social benefits. Godwin regarded the intention to benefit others as being of the essence of virtue, and virtue in turn as being the road to human happiness. Unintentional social benefits were treated by Godwin as scarcely worthy of notice. And then further on, page 19 and 20, Sowell continues, human actions were dichotomized by Godwin into the beneficial and the harmful. And each of these in turn was dichotomized into the intentional and unintentional. The intentional creation of benefits was called virtue. The intentional creation of harm, vice. And the unintentional creation of harm was negligence. The missing category was unintentional benefit. It was precisely this missing category in Godwin that was central to Adam Smith's whole vision. And so we can think about this from Sowell's reading. You can say Godwin did not even address the idea of unintentional benefits. And yet the economic vision, as put forward by Smith, emphasizes that the successful ascent towards wealth in a nation is largely driven by these unintentional orders. So we think we know how to drive the economy because that type of straightforward causality from intentions to results is the norm of our life. The simple stories where intentions lead to outcomes does not fit with what we know in economics about economies. Teachers of economics all know this very well from experience. The teachers face an uphill battle when teaching the basics of economics to new students. The ideas of economics are foreign concepts. It turns out that we are not good intuitive economists. We aren't born understanding the economic way of thinking. Our base understanding of economics is biased. It is biased by the usually correct, simple causal relationship between intentions and results. We think we know how to move an economy forward, but our inner intuitive economist is wrong. The way forward relies on the human action of many, but not a human design anyone can know.